98.7 FM, Arizona's sports station. Bickley Blast.
We are in a place we have never been in Phoenix, Arizona. We have an NBA team that is a clear-cut favorite to win their first championship in 54 years. We have a basketball powerhouse that finished 8 victories better than their nearest competitor. We are not underdogs or Cinderella stories. We are waiting for the survivor of a 4-team tournament just to get a playoff partner. We are not climbing a mountain. We are defending a mountain. Push off all 4 climbers, and we get to plant the flag at the summit. Again, we have always been the home of heartbreak. We've never been the heavy. The 2001 Diamondbacks were perfectly equipped to win a title, but they won 92 games and weren't exactly a dominant team. Charles Barkley's Suns were great, but they had Michael Jordan in their path. Steve Nash's Suns were great, but they had a Spurs dynasty in their path. The Cardinals were a few minutes away from a Super Bowl trophy, but that was a miraculous run by a 9-win team that lost by 40 points in New England near the end of the season. So, in the long history of this godforsaken sports town, we have never had this. A team that could have won a title last year, shored up all of its weaknesses at the center position, watched as Devin Booker and Mikal Bridges grew even better, and a team grew even more closer, if that's even possible. And if DeAndre Ayton comes to play in the postseason, this might be more of a coronation than a competition. This might be a team too good for curses and jinxes and all those bad breaks that once defined our existence for far too long.
Bick, once again, you are so right. This is a spot that in 50-plus years, 54 years of basketball now, the Phoenix Suns have never been in.
No.
They have been in the conversation to win championships before. They've never gone in as the odds-on favorite to win the whole thing. And when you consider the gap between them, at least record-wise, and what they did, I mean, what they did on the road this year, again, for them to have a better road record than any team had a home record, that's indicative of just how dominant this team can be.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that, to me, is the reality. What I think a lot of people in Phoenix are struggling with that have an interest in this team is always that, and we even dealt with it last year going into the playoffs. We had a lot of conversations on this show. It was water cooler talk. It was everywhere. Man, Suns finally make the playoffs after a decade.
Oh, yeah.
And they get the stinking Lakers in the first round. And there was fear.
Yeah.
When they fell behind 2-1, there was a lot of fear. I don't even feel that this year.
I know.
I did, I went over and talked to our news station, 92.3 KTAR this morning. I was talking with Jim Sharp and Jamie West, and they asked that question, who do you fear the most? And my answer was the Phoenix Suns. So I don't think it matters what the competition is, who it's being provided by. The Suns' biggest obstacle going in is themselves.
Yes, it is. And injuries, obviously.
Yes.
And so, but that to me, they're in about as good of a place as possible with that. Because they were able to kind of taper a little bit. They're going to have a week off now. Chris Paul had a big chunk of time off during the season. That's true with a lot of their guys. I think they've got no excuses, and they've got all the talent in the world. And I know when I brought this up about a week and a half ago, I know your initial reaction was anxiety because the idea that they're favorites, I think, it creates pressure. And that creates a fear of failure, and we can all sit back and go, oh, man, can you imagine what it would feel like if they don't get it done this year? And that's been something we have all talked about, that this year, more than any other year that I've been around this basketball team, they are expected to win a championship, right? Expected. And there comes a lot of stuff with that. There comes a lot of heavy stuff with that. But what about this basketball team do you think makes them ill-prepared to handle that? To me, I look at them and I go, all that stuff that can affect the team, I don't think it's going to affect them. They're just not built like that. They are ruthless as a basketball team. You saw it Friday night in Salt Lake City. And you've seen it any number of nights this season. Most of the time, when the Suns have had something to prove, they've gone and done it. And they've gone and done it convincingly.
Yeah. Sam Amick wrote a great story in The Athletic late last week why the Suns are more dangerous than you might think. And toward the tail end of the piece, he's got a quote from Devin Booker in talking about that, the connectivity that this team has. And he said, quote, "Yeah, it's bigger than basketball with us. We've got lifetime friendships and relationships, and that's important. I think Chris can tell you better than me, but you don't find that in this league very often. I think that has a direct translation to our performance on the court. I think that's undeniable." We saw it last year, and that was one of the reasons why they were able to ascend to the top of the Western Conference, is that connectivity that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep going back to the quote from, or the conversation between J.J. Redick and Matt Barnes on J.J. Redick's podcast about how Chris Paul's an acquired leadership taste. This team, it didn't take them long to acquire that taste.
Yeah, that's well said.
And they still like the way it tastes.
And there's something to be said for that, because you watch Chris Paul and the effect that he's had on this basketball team, and you go, why in the world has this man not won a championship yet? Why in the world has he not had this level of connectivity before? It's because this group of Suns players most mirror what Chris Paul is about. And the ones who may not have even known that have been very, very much willing to follow. There's a great dynamic here in terms of the buy-in that Chris Paul got from the veterans around him. Because those are the ones that could normally roll their eyes at it. Like, shut up, dude. Let me play basketball. Stop. You know what I mean? Because that's where James Harden got with Chris Paul. That's where a lot of veterans get. The fact that Devin Booker and Jay Crowder was recruited by Chris Paul, so he knew what he was getting into. These are hardcore dudes. And you can't insult them. You can't make them feel bad. They're not the type to go and pout. And so now you got three guys like that driving this train. If you're a young basketball player, what are you going to do? You're going to not follow that? They'll chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On to the next.
Yeah, on to the next. So it's worked out ideal. And there was a time when I think nitpicky might have been the way that I would describe my assessment of James Jones in the early years, because I did not know where this whole thing was going. There was a lot of stuff that looked good, and then others. The way he has put this thing together has been fabulous. The way that he addressed what some say he should have done before last year's playoffs was very, very good. That's what smart GMs do. That's what champions do. And so what he has done is he has really kind of set the bar for other GMs in town who may or may not be equipped to do what he has done, because they have not won championships the way he has. So he's got a certain viewpoint that you don't get by being a sports executive. You get that from being on the floor with LeBron James and winning titles.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this is great, because now we've got a week to kind of put all this in context, reflect on it. 64 wins as a win total is significant, but what's even better than that, because I made the argument that if you were going to put a plateau out there, 65 wins is generally the baseline for the word great, generally. The 8 games better than everybody else in the NBA tells you all you need to know. It's not so much the win total, it's what the win total is relative to the win total of everybody else in the association.
Yeah, it signifies a couple things. That this is a really good basketball team that takes their opponent very seriously and every night wants to win basketball games, which is not the case in today's NBA.
No.
By the way, the Grizzlies are the only team within single digits of the Suns.
See, that's
11 games behind for the Heat, the Warriors, 12 games behind for the Mavs.
It's amazing.
Just boat racing.
Do you remember when Chris Paul went down, we were worried about, the Warriors might catch him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They stretched that lead out.